Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Failure Effect. Today, I'm trying to put in some acting because I am in the presence of one of the most famous actors in Kenya. His name is Mugambi Nthiga. He's a scriptwriter, film director, an actor. I think you've seen him in Nairobi Half-Life. And he's also an improv comedian. Welcome to the show, Mugambi.
Thank you. Thank
How
you
you
very
feeling?
much.
How are you feeling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about failure.
Well, but failure is a good thing because that's what teaches you, how to be a better person, I suppose, in every
Yes.
area of your life.
Absolutely.
And you've seen quite a bit of that.
I have.
All right.
have.
But before we get there, let's talk about how you started because I have to tell you, you've got a lot under your belt. You've got a career in advertising.
Yes.
You have been on stage and you continue to be on stage.
Yes.
You have been in front of the camera and behind the camera.
Yes.
Where did the love of this come from?
I've had it all my life. A very random story. I had to have some minor surgery when I was 14 that had me having to spend a couple of nights in the hospital. And I was 14, 15 years. So 15, you usually go into the adult ward. You don't go into the children's ward. And there was no room in the adult ward. So I'm with my dad. And the doctor says, sorry, we don't have any room in the adult ward. So he's going to have to go to the children's ward. And my dad registered my disappointment because I didn't want to be in the children's ward with cartoons on the wall and things. And he said, so how's the children's ward different? He said, well, there's a lot of kids. Also, there's television. My dad said, stop right there. He's fine. He's inside. You say television, that's all he needs.
Right.
So I was a lover of anything that was coming out on the screen, not just the product itself, but I loved to see behind the scenes. You remember when we were growing up, there used to be CNN would show on KTN.
Yes.
Once KTN closed, they'd be showing CNN up until all the way into the morning of the next day,
Yes.
into the evening when the KTN regular programming started.
Uh-huh.
There was a show on CNN called Showbiz Tonight.
Yes.
And Showbiz Tonight would show in Nairobi in the morning because of the time difference. And I loved watching it. So
Right.
a lot of the films from the early 90s, as I was preparing to go to school, I would make sure I was eating breakfast on time
Okay.
for the half hour
Wow.
to watch it. Of course, the parents are not amused. You should be eating your breakfast. You're supposed to be going to school.
Yes.
But I got to see a lot of the behind the scenes stuff for a lot of films. So I started getting an idea of what the setup of a film set would look like, how stunts were performed, stunt doubles, that kind of thing. And I was enamored by it completely.
Okay.
One of my favorite movies from childhood was E.T. Seeing that, I was telling my mom this the other day, I had like a spiritual moment.
Wow.
Yeah, for real. I'm not even, it's not hyperbole, it's for real.
Yeah.
At the point where the kids take off on their bikes, I was like, this is magic. This is, if a Kenyan child from the 80s can get involved in this, I would love to be doing that.
It's funny because I think E.T. was such a landmark moment for all of us. It was the very first production of that nature.
For you too?
Yes, for me, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, Michael Jackson was involved. It was just all of the shenanigans. And I think at that point in time, VHS tapes had become, they were just coming out. They were
Yes.
the Netflix of those days. So it was big for us. Now, it's surprising that your parents allowed you to watch that much TV. I suppose they didn't know they were nurturing you at that point in time. Yeah.
No. And there was a lot of resistance to the amount of TV I was watching. A lot. I should have been studying.
Yes.
But how things worked out back then was your street cred on the playground was how much you could regurgitate what you saw on the screen, because that's what formed the conversations the next day. Or if movies came out during the holidays, that's what formed a lot of the conversations when the school term started. I went to Consolata Primary School, and it was a stretch for my folks financially.
Okay.
to have us there. I'm eternally grateful that they put in all the sacrifices to have us go there. Let's just say that there were kids in my class whose parents didn't have to put as much sacrifice. Pretty wealthy kids. And whenever something was out, they had seen it because they went to the cool video libraries.
Yes.
Video libraries were places where there were cassettes arranged in a shelf in different colors that showed you the age restriction or the rating. And you went to the cabinet, like physical video cassettes. You remember what it was
Yes,
like? And you
yes,
tapped on
yes.
the one that you wanted.
Yes, it's like a bookshop, but
It was like it's like exactly it's like a
Yes.
bookshop or a library,
Yes.
an actual book library, but with video cassettes. And if a Home Alone came out, for instance, I was not one of the first people to watch it, and even if I did several months later, it was very often a camera copy,
Right.
from, because we couldn't afford the high rate video libraries. We go to the ones that they had someone with a video camera filming it. Do you remember camera copies?
yes.
You had
Someone actually goes to the movie theater and records.
and records it. So you hear people laughing. You can
Yes.
see people passing in
Walking.
front of. Ah, man, the sound was terrible. We didn't
have
have subtitles
suffered.
back then, so you had to just. And it was, people will be like 244p. I mean 144p. We were watching everything in low resolution with bad sound. So I remember just trying to be a sponge, trying to, street cred. I need the playground credibility. I need to be able to be one-on-one with the conversation. And do you remember Terminator 2?
Yes.
One of the finest action films.
Yes.
I didn't watch that until many years after it had come out. A lot of my classmates saw it. But I only had the music video for one of the songs on the soundtrack by Guns N' Roses that had clips of the film. And I'd watch that video and memorize the scene so that someone would be like, oh, remember the scene where he does this and this? I'm like, yeah, I remember the scene. But I was going off of the video, music video. None of the context of the actual film where it fell in the story, none of that.
Yeah.
So that, I think that made me such an avid watcher, just gathering information
Yeah.
and having it fill my brain. I did not know, my parents didn't know that we were nurturing, kind of laying the foundation stone for what a
Right.
filmmaking career would be later on.
Okay. And I believe you also had another pivotal moment while still in school, but this is after Consolata. So what was this?
Another pivotal moment.
Yes, watching a play.
Sorry?
Watching a play.
Yes, of course. Hey. Hey. Yes. So in Form 1,
Where was this in Form 1?
I was in Lenana School.
Okay.
So going from a nice private day school to a national school, which was a boarding school, was tough.
Right.
That culture shock was, hey, boss, it was rough, man.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yo. You're sleeping in dormitories. I joined high school, I'll say the year, in 1995. And it was at that point that our school intake rules had been loosened somewhat. This is when the concept of the back door was really catching on.
Right.
And I'm one of those beneficiaries of entering back door.
Oh,
Yeah.
He confessed in public.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's fine. I've accepted. But the fact that many students at that point were being taken in through the back door meant that you always had more students that could be contained by the school. So there's only so many desks, so many chairs. So there was always a fight for desks and chairs. And I remember at one point, I was sharing a desk with someone, and I was like, "This is not it. You're sharing with cold water. You have to wake up in the middle of the morning,
Yes.
do community work, clean the corridors." And I wasn't enjoying it at all. It was getting a bit existential. I was so homesick. I'd be crying on my own.
Oh.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Little 14-year-old boy crying. Once we had to do this thing called cross country where you'd run a long distance. I wasn't a runner at all. But once we got caught in the rain, and it was raining and we still had to run. Oh, I cried in that rain, man. Just no one could tell,
I'm so sorry.
Rain is coming down.
Yes.
Yeah. So in the middle of that, um, someone seeks me out and says, "You want to Consolata?" And I'm like, "Yes." They said, "This is a Form 2 student," and he was like, "There's a play that's showing at St. Mary's. You know St. Mary's?" I'm like, "Yes, I do." There's a play that's showing there, and if you pay me 50 bob, you can go for the play.
Okay, so this was Joseph and the Amazing Tech,
That
which
is
I was
correct.
in.
No
Yes.
freaking way.
Promise you. 19.
No way.
Yes.
Then 1995 staging
Yes.
at St. Mary's.
Yes.
What role did you play?
I was a choir girl, but I also got to drip the coats on Joseph because there was only really one pivotal role for a female actress. That was,
Right.
the Pharaoh's wife. Yeah. Everyone else was in the choir. But anyway, carry on. It's your story, not mine.
Did you do Oliver Twist the next year?
No,
Oh.
because that was my last year in Saints.
Okay. Okay, so now while you were on stage, I paid the 50 bob to this guy. He said, put on your Sunday best, be up school, the van is going to pick us up and take us to St. Mary's. So when I got, I was up school, in my Sunday best, and the van was there and we got in. But one of the Form 4 students was like, so this is the kid you said you gave us space in the van. And he came to me and he said, now listen, this is a privilege for you to be going for this thing. You're the only Form 1 and you've never been in the choir. These are all choir people. So when choir season begins in second term, you have to join the choir. Is that a deal? I said, yes, it's a deal. So I got into the van, and because the choir members were there, they started reminiscing about the music festivals for the year before, and a certain concert that used to be called, it was organized for the Nairobi Hospice, a fundraiser where all the choirs in all the schools and all the choirs actually in Nairobi would learn all these pieces from Handel's Messiah and then perform them, including the Hallelujah chorus.
Right.
So these guys started singing, and tenor, bass, tenor 1, tenor 2, bass 1, bass 2, just hit after hit after hit as we drove from Lenana School to St. Mary's, including Hallelujah. I'd only had Hallelujah in clips. I'd never had the full thing.
Right.
So I was like, what is going on in here? These voices are so beautiful. These guys are amazing. So by the time we're getting to St. Mary's, I'm primed. I've already had my mind blown one direction.
Yeah.
Then the play begins. There's a full orchestra. There's costumes. There's
Yes.
lights. It was like visual overload. The only thing I can compare to that was many years later being in Times Square in New York and being like, what is
Wow.
this? Like, I was so blown away by the music.
Yeah.
Hearing all these songs for the first time. There's a Form 3 student who was next to me, seeing me taking it in. And he was like, yeah.
That's how
our work
Saints
here
rocks.
is done. Like, he was like, he kept looking at me and a song would play and I'm like, what? Then there was a scene with the motorcycles,
Yes.
with the Ishmaelites taking Joseph.
Yeah.
And they were like, they look, a group of Ishmaelites come. And then we had a bang, and we're here. I'm like, what is going on? Then you see guys in like pretty top grade motorcycles riding down the aisle, picking up Joseph and taking him out. And they were in leather and they had sunglasses and bandanas. I was speechless.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
You guys put on. You've taken me back, man. I didn't know. Had no idea you were there.
Well,
And I heard that the guy who was playing Joseph actually went on and got
went to
something of a
Hollywood,
career.
yes, yes.
Yeah, he ended up in Hollywood.
Yes.
And yeah.
yes.
Boom. So at the bit where he's singing that last chorus of Any Dream Will Do and Bring Me My Colored Coat, I ended up acting in it many years later. That's how I remember the songs. And they had him standing on a part of the stage that could be raised.
Yes.
And he was wearing the coat, but as he kept on raising up,
The coat.
the coat just kept
Got
expanding
longer.
because he made it long. So it was dragging on the ground like it had a train. And
Yes.
by the end of the show, give me my color coat, my amazing color coat. Saints did
Yeah.
spectacular things
Yes.
on the theater stage. I feel so bad that legacy kind of came to an end. But my goodness, that stuff was so moving to me.
Yeah.
And again, I was that little kid watching E.T. And I said, yeah, this is it.
Okay.
Universe will always give you signs of what you ought to be doing.
True.
And it does it in very visceral ways. I think anyone that's watching this, and we'll come to the failure afterwards, I have to draw the duality, the yin and yang between, in the process of showing you what your destiny is. And part of it is the elation of something that seems so distant and far away that kind of lays a little bit on the roadmap and says, here, follow this path. And that was one of those special moments.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you finished Form 4 because I want to get to university,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Which you didn't study here for your undergrad?
No, undergrad I studied here.
Oh, okay. All right.
Postgrad
Okay.
I went
you
outside.
abroad. So what did you study?
IT.
Okay.
I have a Bachelor of Science in Information Systems and Technology from United States International University, Africa.
But why? Because, your path so far is so clear. You're supposed to be on stage or in front of a camera, but no. What happened?
I finished high school in 98. By that point, I'd been in choir for that first year, did a few songs from Handel's Messiah, really developed something of a voice. I was a tenor, my voice hadn't broken, so that was cool. I joined the drama club in Form 3 and 4. So when I was leaving high school, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. But I knew going up to my folks and saying I want to do something in the performing arts
Right.
would be suicide.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
No, you can't do that. You can't. The thought that, so that you do what? You be on stage and be an actor,
And a suffering actor.
a suffering actor on top of that. And the acting scene wasn't known for virtue and morality.
Right.
There was a lot of what do I call it? Urban legends about how some of the actors we knew were drug addicts.
Yeah.
And oh man, my desk mate, I'm going to say his name, because he also followed his dream. His name is Levi Wataka.
Okay.
You should have him on this.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the conductor of the Nairobi Orchestra.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he's the person that I ran to after that day at St. Mary's, and I told him, dude, my friend, I had an experience last night. I had these guys singing in the van. We went to St. Mary's and watched a play. We need to join choir in second term. And he said, yep. But he stuck with it. Music is his career now. Blows my mind to this day. But Levi had a sister who was trying, an elder sister who had finished, she was in campus and she was trying to join the acting scene. And she talked about the urban legends should hear. And there were stories about at the Kenya National Theatre, if you go during rehearsal, there'll be a rehearsal going on stage, but there'll be people in the audience shooting up drugs.
Why?
Or shooting up drugs in the bathroom or smoking weed. And it's funky, it's banky.
Yes.
Banky is halfway into the grave. It's a gateway drug. Next thing is heroin. So all of these stories were going around, and there's no way I could go to my folks and tell them that I wanted something outside of the corporate world. No. Plus, I marginally didn't do that well in KCSE, where I'd get first pickings in a course that I wanted at UON.
Right.
So when USIU opened up, because you only needed a C plus, I had a B minus. I was like, yeah, this looks like the thing to do. I wanted to get into do marketing because the other thing I loved was commercials.
Right.
And I thought maybe if I go into marketing, I'll be close to commercials. But IT was the vogue thing then.
Yeah.
It's 99. Computers are now the thing.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm good at installing a printer.
Yeah, you.
I know how to, organize the once you had your dial-in
Yes.
with the internet
Yes.
being installed, I was like, yeah, I know how to set that up. So yeah, IT seems like the thing. Nothing like it. I did not enjoy it at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you suffered through 4 years of it.
So the general requirements courses were good. Once we got into the IT courses, there was suffering. There was really suffering, and then I decided to take an extra minor in marketing. But it was when I was in campus that I started getting the first inklings of mental
Right.
trouble.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when it started showing up, because I remember feeling overwhelmed sometimes. My friends would know. My friends who are not in USIU knew exam season was when I would get stressed out, or when the term papers were due, and it was really because of overwhelm. There was no words for it.
Yeah.
While I was in campus, I was also a dancer.
Okay.
Yeah, I joined a dance group called All Over, which was all the rave back then.
I think those of us of that Rika, we all remember all over.
All Over was a game changer.
Yeah.
And we were performing all the time. We'd perform in the church because we were a Christian dance group, but we'd be performing in the clubs as well. It was part of the work that we were doing. It was only gospel music. We wouldn't dance for any secular musicians or anything of that sort. So it was a hard job, and we didn't get paid a cent for it.
Oh, wow.
It was a culture then. If you're involved in ministry,
Okay.
you're doing this for God.
Okay.
So any takings from gigs would be put right back into the ministry.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, how did your depression manifest? Because
Yes.
dance should ideally be a form of therapy. You know how physical activity helps bring out endorphins and, sort of mitigates the effects of depression. And, like they say, exercise is one way to get yourself feeling a little bit
Yeah.
back to sorts alongside other therapies, right?
True.
So, you're dancing, but you're still suffering overwhelm. So, what
Yes.
did that look like?
So it's absolutely correct. Physical activity will help your brain, but it's one of the things that you ought to be doing to make sure you're in good mental state.
Right.
You also ought to be eating right, being engaged in mindfulness.
Yeah.
We had no idea what that was back then. This is the early 2000s.
Yeah.
What do we know about mental wellness? Even mental health was not a buzzword.
True.
So even mental illness, you didn't have a mental illness, you were a bit crazy, or
Yeah.
you were mad, or you were off. Or,
Yeah.
And depression was something that you read about in Parents Magazine. You remember Parents Magazine? Or it was a buzzword that was used in the press to talk about, is depression linked to suicide? Things like that. But you never thought that that was something that you felt. So I never ever called it that. I wouldn't even say I was depressed then. I was just having a hard time balancing so many things. So my life was not balanced at all. I wasn't getting the adequate rest. And this is the story of many 20 something year olds, people in their early 20s, who are in campus. You're not resting, you're on the hustle.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot. And whereas people were partying hard, we would be rehearsing hard, or would be out gigging. And I laugh at memes nowadays where people will post a picture of an elephant and block out its eyes and say, "What animal is
Yeah.
this?" And the title will be, "What a USIU exam looks like." And I'm like, yeah, fine, we'll take it. But the USIU education was immersive. You had to be writing papers. You had to have critical thinking. You weren't there to regurgitate things. For some courses you were, but you had to be thinking. You had to be present. And being present for education, and being present for ministry, being present for, you still have a family life. You still live with your folks.
Right.
And of course, there's a back and forth about what your folks want you to be and who you start imagining yourself to be. I was a very overwhelmingly born again Christian. So there was that as well, and serving in church. I just had so many things going on. It would manifest in stress. Like I would feel like I was in fight or flight all the time.
Okay.
Sleeping was hard, and concentrating, trying to concentrate on doing research from 4 or 5 sources to write a paper about Mao Zedong was tough.
Yeah.
Was tough. So my classwork started slipping. I failed a few courses with that, and I didn't tell my folks about it.
Okay.
And the idea of how I was on track for graduation was not mine because I knew what the truth was. And at the point I was telling my folks, okay, so listen, I'm not graduating this year. I'm going to have to graduate next year. Why? Because I have to repeat a few courses. Why? Because I tried to turn it around and say, because I decided I want to do these courses instead of these ones. But show us your transcripts. So they were very, I appreciate that
Yeah.
about my folks. They were like, you're an adult now. You don't come and show us your report form. When the transcripts would be mailed, because then, hey man, we've come a long way. They would be mailed to the house. My mom would take them and then put them outside so that I would take them into my room. Show us your transcripts. I have not looked at my transcripts in the longest time because
Right.
I don't want to see those grades. I don't want to see what the truth is of how all these things that I'm doing are affecting my studies. So one night when my sister was in boarding school at the time and my brother was asleep, they called me into their room and they were like, now you need to tell us everything that's happening because you're missing your graduation. What's going on? Bring your transcripts. I was opening my transcripts for the first time in front of them. It was very humbling. And hey, I was given quite the lecture. Wait.
But hold up. So this is major IT, minor marketing,
Marketing.
and you still don't see that perhaps this is not where you should be. Like, because the universe is still giving you signs.
Wow. Okay, now when you put it like that, I've never seen it like that ever. The universe was giving me signs. I still was chasing after the dream. I knew I always wanted to be in the arts.
Yeah.
By this point, being in all over kind of solidified that. And then being in all over also got us very close to other artists. And then slowly got us into media.
Okay.
And I was like, media is also where I want to be. So we'd go for interviews at Capital FM, Nation FM, and I'd be watching the presenters like, whoa.
Yeah.
Jimmy Gathi interviewed us, and I was watching him like, wow. Teaching Yasani, who was at Nation FM. We'd see Modoni Buika and Bob Kyoko, and I'm like, this is where I want to be. However, I still really wanted a job. You
Yes.
know, I wanted a job. I was like, I'll balance these things out. The sign that I was being given then was you have too much on your plate.
Yeah.
You're a little spread thin. You can't be
Yeah.
getting into everything. And this is real life. This is the real world. If you're going to have to work for, get something, you have to work for it. You want the good grades, you're going to have to work for them. They're not going to magically appear. And then you have to be accountable to the people that are paying your school fees. You can't be keeping these secrets. You're only going to be hiding them under the. You can only keep your transcripts on that shelf unopened for so long. After a while, everything is going to come out.
Right.
And so when it did, and I kind of made the decision to turn around and concentrate on studies a bit. I ended up, I ended up leaving all over. Then all over wound up shortly afterwards, and then I went back now fully into concentrating on studies because I was like, "Yo, okay, that was a good thing, but
Yeah.
now this is the important thing." But it was at that time that I had my first migraine.
Okay.
And it was a very normal evening. And yes, the other thing that happened was that I got an internship at an advertising agency.
Okay.
Yes, and so I would go to the internship and then go to school to finish up those last courses that I had failed in. And one evening, I was looking around and I'm like, Kwani, I've looked into a light, like into a bright light.
Wow.
There's like a, why is there?
Yeah.
I don't remember looking into a light. And it looked like there was when you looked into a bright light and there's that after image that's stuck in your eyes. I was like, I kept looking around. I'm like, what's going on? I went to class and then suddenly this terrible pain starts showing up in my head and it's not palpitating, it's just there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is going on? I've never had a migraine in my life. So class came to an end. No, I had to leave class. I packed up and left. And then I was sitting somewhere and I'm like, this is bad. I don't know what's going on. So I went to the school clinic and asked and said, I just have this headache. And the guy in the clinic was quite the doctor was quite standoffish. He was never showed any emotion. He wasn't.
Right.
He was just like, what's the symptom? Da, 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 da. Here's your prescription. Go. Find buy your dawas anywhere. For the first time in my life, I saw some concern on his face
Oh.
because I was in such pain.
Yeah.
I was cringing. So he said, I think I know what's going on. Please tell me what happens when I switch on this light. He switched on a light.
Oh.
And I cringed until
Yeah.
I did this.
Yeah.
And he was like, I think I know what the problem is. Please just, here's some painkillers. Sit there. Just have a rest. Okay.
Right.
Just take it easy. Like, I've never seen this guy as a human being. I found someone who was willing to. I was driving my parents' car at that point. It's how it got me from work to
School.
to school. And my dad didn't work in the country at the time, so I could drive his car around. And so I asked this guy, please help me. Please drive me to the hospital. He drove me to Nairobi. And then I sat at the parking lot of Nairobi Hospital. I texted my sister and my mom and told them I'm in the hospital. I'm not well. What I thought I was typing was gibberish. They could just
Oh.
catch some words because even looking at the light in my phone
Yeah.
was so
Painful.
difficult. The lights in the hospital were too bright, so I sat in the parking lot and did this.
Yeah.
So they find me in the parking lot like this. By this point, I'd already puked. The pain was so, I puked there in the parking lot. So I was like, dude, I'm sick. I don't know what's going on. So we go into the hospital, and by this point, I've taken off my sweater and I've draped it like a cloak. So I'm only looking down. And long story short, I had to be admitted for tests and MRIs and whatever, just so they could make sure there was nothing wrong with my brain.
Right.
And then it turned out it was migraines. So one of the nurses was like, these are the symptoms. And then she asked me one last question. Where do you go to school? What do you do? I'm a student at USIU and an intern at an ad agency. And she says, are you doing exams on campus? And I say, yes. How did you know? She says, just checking.
Right.
And noted that. It was the first time that I made an association between the stress that I was going through and how it would affect my body. And turns out it was all psychosomatic. I had to resit some exams. I missed a very important audition. Fortunately, they had me back to do a separate audition because when I told them I was admitted in hospital, they were like, okay, cool.
Okay.
That was Serafina. The first time that Serafina, the Broadway version, not the movie version.
Okay.
A lot of people adapt the movie version, but there's
Yes.
an original Broadway version from which the movie was adapted. And I ended up on the cast, and the lead actor who was playing Serafina was Mkamze Mwatela in her first professional acting role. Playing the role of Colgate was a gentleman called Jason Runo.
Yes.
And that's where a lot of my friendships in the arts began.
What theater was this?
This was, it was at the Kenya National Theatre.
Okay.
Produced by a theatre company called Sterling Quality Entertainment.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So again, that was my first inkling of, okay, all is not well. But by that point, I'd already signed up for counseling at school because the stress was, this being almost catatonic
Yeah.
while reading my notes or going to the computer lab to type out a term paper and not being there, just being overwhelmed by a certain panic. It was
was
starting
a
to
lot.
eat my head.
Okay.
Jesus was not helping. There's no amount of worship that was getting me out of it. So I was like, I'm in a funk, so I need help.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the interim, I assume you did well in USIU. You passed your exams.
Yeah, I picked it up, and
All right.
that ended up being quite all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you went into advertising
Yeah.
work full time as a copywriter.
Yes.
Okay. What does a copywriter do? For those who don't know.
Copywriter. And I don't blame anyone who doesn't know. When my one of my best friends got into the ad scene about a month before me, and he was taken on as a copywriter intern. I thought a copywriter was a typesetter.
Right.
Yeah, I thought they're the ones who make sure that the words are aligned properly, and I had no idea. I didn't even know people were making ads on computers. I
Yeah.
thought maybe is there a printing press? Do you typeset? Copywriter? What is that? Or do you have to go and copy the words of a thing onto another? I had no idea. But a copywriter is basically anyone that writes copy, and copy is any words that are written to sell something or to sell an idea, sell something for which someone needs to take a step after they've read the words.
Okay.
So it can be anything from the words on a billboard to the words on a newspaper advert, the words on a book cover, tagline for a movie, the words that people are speaking in a TV commercial.
Yes.
But what we know it mostly for is no pasi leo. It's that kind of
like
thing.
that, yes.
Yeah.
A call to action.
Yeah, usually it's that kind of thing. So that's what I got into doing.
Okay. But then you quit after how many years?
I joined a small ad agency called Access Leo Barnett in 2006. And then I moved to Ogilvy. And I moved to in 2005. Then I moved to Ogilvy in 2006. Wait, I have my timelines all wrong. I was at Ogilvy from 2004 to 2007. So I joined Access in 2003. And then I quit to go to school, to grad school in the US.
All right.
I was there for 2 years. I went to Syracuse University in upstate New York to study advertising. Now I was really studying the thing I was doing, a Master of Arts in Advertising. Really wonderful time. Except for the timing. Because I was graduating in 2008 in July, which is the exact same month that America went into a recession.
Oh, my goodness.
The timing was perfect. The timing couldn't have been better.
So what happened? Because I remember that, financial institutions crumbling all over the place,
Yes.
So how did this affect you personally?
The first thing when we had the first financial institution that shut down was called Lehman Brothers.
Yes.
Lehman Brothers
Was a Ponzi.
You see, I didn't know that.
Full-on Ponzi scheme.
We didn't know that.
Right.
My interaction with Lehman Brothers was sitting outside, opposite the Lehman Brothers building, the main Lehman Brothers building in New York City was a Starbucks. I was walking by that Starbucks with a good friend of mine. We're still friends to this day. Her name is Esther Siokao. She lived in New Jersey. She knew I was in Syracuse and then later on in Philly. And she was like, Syracuse, New York is not New York. I work in New York. Even if she lived in New Jersey, she'd take the train, which is what a lot of people do. And she was like, let me give you a good day in New York. So over spring break, yes, about 3 months before we were done. This was in March. Yes, July was when we were done. About 4 months. We'd walked around a bit and we stopped to have a coffee. And we're there in front of... Now, the Lehman Brothers had this LCD display.
Right.
That was not common. In Times Square has LCD displays everywhere.
Yes.
But you go into the smaller streets, you don't have a building that's draped with LCD screens. And that's what the Lehman Brothers building was. And it had these beautiful, what I'll call Microsoft screensaver visuals. Beautiful ones that would play in a loop. And as we're having the coffee, I'm like, wow, this is beautiful. And then Lehman Brothers, beautiful. And I'm like, wow, these guys must have so much money. Like, this is New York. Like, this is Wall Street. Siokao, God bless her. I don't know if she'd remember if she said this. She sipped our coffee and said, it's not going to last long. And I'm like, what do you mean? This is March. She called it.
Yeah.
Way before it happened.
Yeah.
And then we've graduated. I remember it was the night, I think it was July 4th, in fact. We're hearing fireworks in the background.
Yeah.
And then Yeah, but the US was very backward when it came to. We had internet on our phones before they did.
Yes, yes, this is true.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had internet on our kabambes before they did. But I remember the last thing reading before I left the computer lab or whatever was that Lehman Brothers are shut down. And I'm like, what's going on? America's gone into a recession. Hiya. 9/11 had still
Yes.
happened. The war, the fake war, the war, the
Yes.
war on weapons of mass
Afghan-
destruction.
Yes.
Already, George W. Bush's rule had already been sullied by so many things.
Yeah.
And now America is in a recession. What does this mean? I was asking the same question you did until we realized what issue it was having on our job searches.
All right.
We started searching for jobs at the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
several months before we were going to graduate.
Yeah.
And it seemed, well, we were getting emails back and forth, and some people were getting interviews. But suddenly, all of those lines went cold.
Of course.
Because advertising budgets get pulled first.
Yeah. Yeah. This is true.
So by the time, by September of that year, as we were now getting into the cold season again, fall had come, autumn, and the summer, which had proved to be quite hopeful, now was really becoming real. By
Okay.
this point, I'd been taken in by some friends who lived in Philly.
Okay.
And I was sending email after email, following up on everything, trying to find whatever interview I could. And all of them fell through. All of them.
no.
Even a job at Ogilvy, New York, which was a sure thing.
Yeah.
Oh man, it was 3 interviews down and it seemed like it was an offer letter coming. That fell through as well.
That's interesting because in today's context in Kenya, it's the same thing that's happening because the economy is shrinking. There's very increasing taxation, increasing manufacturing costs, which then also affects advertising services.
Yes.
More people are turning to AI. So there are a lot of people out there who are sending emails and not getting responses, especially in media and advertising. But back to you. This brings you back to Kenya, I
Yes,
suppose.
it
Okay.
does.
What happens?
I come back to Kenya in 2009. By this point, I was in two sort of like quagmires. One, I'm not coming back wealthy.
Yes.
To raise my ticket money,
Oh. Woo, okay. Okay.
to raise money for a ticket,
Yeah.
and to raise money because I knew I was coming back to Kenya, and I didn't know what lay on the other side. I'd only been gone for 2 years. However, this was 2007 to 2009. By this point, an election has happened.
Yes.
Remember, a very violent election.
Yes.
Kibaki is in his second term, and it was in the late 2000s that a lot of the building projects that you see now started.
Yes.
You'd be walking by a place that had a house, like a bungalow,
Yes.
on a big yard, and then come back weeks later, and a foundation had been chimbwad for a building that would be now 3 or 4 floors of apartments. Nairobi was changing. A lot of young people in their 20s, late 20s, early 30s came into money. They were getting jobs. The economy was doing really well. So by the time I was coming back to Kenya, a lot of my friends who had left, who were on their second job, were probably on their third or fourth job, and were now starting to bring in a little bit of money. They're able to, people had moved out of their homes, they'd bought their first car, they were getting married, they were having their first or second child. Things had changed a lot in those 2 years. And so to raise my airfare, because I didn't have a job, I did have a few jobs here and there, summer jobs, that kind of thing. And I had gotten back into acting because advertising was not working.
Right.
And I'd gotten something of a small career started. I even was an extra on a Hollywood film,
Wow.
Law Abiding Citizen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Jamie
look-
Foxx, Gerard Butler.
Oh,
Yep.
did you actually get to meet them?
I got to see them. You
Okay.
can't talk to them.
Okay.
You can't. The protocols on set are so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Jamie Foxx looked at me and said, "What's up?"
Oh,
Yeah,
because
that
you're
was
kind of
nice. That
you
was
look
nice.
like him, Kodo, like a little bit, a little.
Ah, really? He's
But
a cool
anyway.
guy, man.
Okay.
Very cool guy. Very cool guy. I got to have a conversation with the director of the film, F. Gary Gray. He's the same guy who did Friday by Felicia. He did. Straight Out of Compton. He did Set It Off.
Wow.
And
Yes.
I was watching him work. That was amazing. I didn't know at the time, but that was one of the good foundations for
Yeah.
what I
where-
would end up doing. Being on set for those 3 days was really amazing. Watching people act, watching a stand-in come in. A stand-in is a person who, let's imagine that this was a film set and me and you are 2 huge movie stars.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have us here as they were setting up the lights and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, they would have stand-ins who would sit there. They would go over the basic blocking. The director would be using them to work out how the blocking would be while the actor is in his trailer or her trailer getting into character.
Can I ask you, does this happen on a Kenyan set? Like,
It has
Okay.
for bigger productions.
Okay, okay.
Because I ended up being a stand-in for another actor
Okay.
here, but I'll come to that. So watching all of this happen was really cool. Hearing background actors talk.
right.
You wonder when you watch a film what it took for someone to end up in front of that camera.
Yeah.
A person coming in and saying, "Here's your coffee.
Yeah.
Can I get you anything else?" "No, I'm good. Thank you. Enjoy your meal." Someone who does that, that is a break.
Oh.
That is a huge, huge break.
Wow.
An accident happens, and a passerby comes and asks, "Are you all right?" Huge
That's
break.
it.
I got a line. I got a line. Because that takes you from being an extra to a featured extra.
Right.
Extra is apparently not a good word to say. That it's background actor.
Okay. Okay.
House help, house manager, same thing.
So you're in Jamie Foxx's movie raising money for your airfare to come.
That was actually not the thing. That
Okay.
got me a boost that helped me to contribute to the rent because my friends, God bless them, did not put any pressure on me to pay the rent.
Okay.
At all. They were like, "You're staying here, you'll figure yourself out." So I made a little bit money off of that. But to raise my airfare, I donated my body to science.
What? Okay. Huh? You can
There's
do
a
this while you're
university
online.
hospital.
Yeah.
There's a university hospital in Philly. A lot of the university hospitals, studies show that blah, 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 blah. A lot of those studies are conducted studies show that the effect of this drug on your body leads to these side effects.
Okay.
There's a certain drug that they were testing out that they had to see what the side effects were on certain demographics. So they'll put these ads out in the subway, in train stations. You can see them very clearly.
Yeah.
I can't remember what they call it, test subjects. I can't remember. But if a sign is put out of, Philadelphia University Hospital, I think that's what it was called, is looking for test subjects, you
Why
can
not?
apply.
Yeah.
And the money is not too bad. It's just a lot of work.
Yeah. Okay.
Like 3 hospital visits, a lot of drawing of blood,
Yeah.
and then 1 hospital stay.
Okay.
Yeah.
For how long?
2 nights.
Okay.
They were studying the effect of niacin on a certain demographic. So people around my age then, their late 20s, of all ethnicities,
Right.
male and female.
Okay.
And so I said, cool, I'll do it. I sent an email. They replied. I went to the hospital. They did some pre-tests, which involved drawing blood. And they said, we'll let you know if you're qualified. And then you come through. Now, the interesting thing is they pay for everything.
Okay.
You get jabbed, that's
get
20
paid.
bucks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if they're drawing blood and they miss the vein,
Oh, so
Yeah.
that's $40.
that's 40 bucks.
Okay.
They missed my vein twice before
Okay.
they finally got it.
Ooh.
$60 in the bag. I'm like, cool. I needed the money. It's painful, but I needed the money.
Yeah.
For the stay, the stay, they attach thermometers to you, and they tell you one is to measure external temperature, the other one is to measure internal temperature, and we need to have that temperature measured all the time. So the external thermometer will be stuck to your face like this. It's like a stethoscope that's stuck to your face.
Right.
Do you want to know how we're going to do your internal? And I thought about it, and I'm like, man, okay. So here's the lube. Here's the. I'm like, oh my god. So yeah, sorry. Oh,
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Okay, no worries.
I'm sorry.
Ooh, and we still have so much ground to cover. How are we going to do this? No worries.
2 episodes.
How? Hold
2
on, hold on.
episodes.
Yeah, actually, we'll have to bring you back
It's fine.
because this is we've only just. Okay, so we're gonna wrap it up, but I'll book another session for him.
So on the day for the visit, I get handed lube. I get handed this tube that I was supposed to put up by the sun.
Give you
Don't shine.
lube.
And I'm connected to EKG machines. I'm connected to all of these things. That's how I
Right.
raised my airfare.
Uh-huh.
However, I did not know that if you're passing through Heathrow, you need a visa.
Yeah.
And I have to say this, all of these laws, these international laws that say who can have a visa where,
Yeah.
are very restrictive, and they are very, it's a systemic issue. It's systemic racism. Because if you want to land in London Heathrow on a connecting flight, you need to get a transit visa. A transit visa costs money. I can't remember how much it was, $75, I think. And you have to wait. You have to prove that you have booked a ticket. So you have to book the ticket in advance of doing that.
Right.
And I booked the ticket and submitted my passport, and they delayed by 3 weeks, during which time my visa went out of status. And my ticket was, I had to forfeit the ticket
Oh, no.
and pay an extra $300
Oh.
to reschedule it.
Oh my.
So pretty much the money that I'd raised, I raised money for the airfare.
Yeah.
But the money that I'd raised to stay and be okay, pretty much went because of these stupid restrictive visa rules.
Ay.
So I come back to Kenya and I don't have much money in my pocket.
Okay.
I haven't had a job. And yeah, I don't have much money in my pocket. I haven't had a job. So I don't have much to show for my stay in America, aside from my degree.
Okay.
Those were the two quagmires. That is when the spiral began.
So another mental health break.
Yes. Now this
Okay.
was the beginning of the proper one.
Okay.
So I'm back in Kenya and I did not want to go back into advertising. Studying it, realized that, hey, man, advertising can be played here. Kenya, not because we don't have the abilities, but because the client is king and what the client says goes. And they don't look at the ad agency or the ad creatives as partners. They look at them as people I can speak over.
Right.
The power someone has when they're in a boardroom, they come with that big dick energy, yeah? And they wield it around all over the place. And as much as they, on paper, were collaborators, they're still the boss. And I was getting inklings of that. Scan Group at the time was starting its rise. It was starting to buy out agencies. And that was one of the, and I've said this, one of the worst things, when Barrett started buying up all these, one of the worst things to happen to the ad scene. Because yes, you give one man all this power, but he was like Thanos. And snapping, and half of the creativity just died, and
Yes.
all of us were now subject to his rule. And this is the industry I came back to. I was in the beginning of the end when I'd left, and the end had happened when I was
because
here.
you missed all of the glory days of advertising. When you like you say, you did have these separate agencies competing, which
Yes.
gave the market an air of fairness. But now
Yes.
Bharat Thakur comes in,
Yes.
and all of the business is his.
Exactly.
Take it or leave it.
Exactly. So
Right.
we're not competing for creativity.
Yeah.
And he built his empire by kowtowing, by nyenyekei to to clients and promising them the sun, moon, and stars. And the clients became really, really, really powerful. Because
Right.
now it was all about what accounts do we have? How much money are we making? You build a sales force that you have to pay. Payroll has to be met every month. People still have to make their money. We know the case where the case was made public. I believe a lot of kickbacks were given. You have to raise a lot of money
Yeah.
to do that. And so you nyenyekea and nyenyekea. And soon creatives were losing more and more of their power. I had dreams of coming and starting an agency. I realized that was difficult. I didn't know the first thing. And so I went back into advertising.
Okay.
I came back in September of 2009. By April of the next month, I was starting my next job, which was
Okay.
at McCann, Kenya, which was previously McCann Erickson.
Yes.
One of the most celebrated creative directors from McCann Erickson was Judy Kibinge,
Yes.
who had won lots of awards. She was a copywriter. She'd risen up the ranks and then departed and went into filmmaking.
Yes.
But McCann, I was as much as excited as I was to be there. They were dealing with one of their biggest accounts, actually Africa-wide. It was bigger than any Africa-wide. Coca-Cola, which other one? Barclays, whatever. All of those Africa-wide things. This was the biggest. Nestle was huge. And I was the account planner on
Okay.
Nestle.
Right.
I had departed from creative. Account planning is really strategy that leads to the creative. And I was like, I still want to serve the creative better. The standard of creative briefs had already started plummeting by the time I was leaving and was on the ground by the time I came back. And I was like, let me try and change things from the source. I was hired as the account planner and I was immediately out of my depths.
Oh, wow.
Immediately.
Okay.
Immediately.
All right. So I'm going to pause you right there
Yeah.
because we're about to get to a very juicy part of your story, which involves not just work, but also a woman.
Yes.
And then eventually
Yeah.
everything that led you into the film industry and the consequences of that decision. So,
Yes.
what we will do is we will bring you back for part 2.
Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for the next part of the story. Now, if you want to get in touch with Mugambi Nthiga, use the social media handles you see on your screen, and we will see you in a few.
I'm really sorry it took this long, but I'm really happy to come back and continue with this because this is where it really starts to go. And I think what I want people to know in the second episode is, just like I said, the yin and the yang, the ecstasies, watching E.T., watching you in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat is just the yin. Your failures, the painful bits that you don't want to face, that's the yang.
All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for ending this part
Thank you.
on that high note.
Yeah.
And we will see you next week for the next part of this interview.